Rolex has a substantial catalog of watches ranging all the way from the Oyster Perpetual on one end up to the Day-Date on the other, with lots of options in between. If you're a special client, you'll even get off-catalog pieces that are just encrusted in diamonds. Now, within that lineup, there are a couple watches that are really iconic and really recognizable, such as the Submariner, the Day-Date, and the Datejust. But there's one watch in the lineup that really stands out from the rest, and nobody's really talking about it. It's not the Milgauss, it's not the Deep Sea, it's not the Yachtmaster. I'm of course talking about the Rolex 1908. Now, the 1908 was released in 2023, and it was launched as a replacement to the Cellini lineup, which was wound down in 2022. The Cellini's been a long-standing part of the Rolex catalog, dating all the way back to the 1960s and 70s, and there have been a ton of really iconic Cellini models that were very different from the rest of the Rolex lineup. Most notably would be the King Midas. When the Cellini was designed and released, most of the then current Rolex watch lineup were tool watches. They were designed for pilots, divers, explorers, or even double agents who were trying to save the world. But Mr. René-Paul Jeanneret, I hope I got that right, who was the director of Rolex marketing back in the 1960s, he had a really interesting idea. In a time when most people just had a single watch and didn't have a watch collection, he tried to think, how can we make customers want to buy more than just one watch? And his solution was to influence people to believe that they needed a watch for different parts of their lives. Whether that was playing sports, going to work, or dressing out for a black tie event, every activity or occasion needed a different type of watch. Obviously, this would ultimately allow Rolex to sell their current clients more watches, and it would bring in a wider variety of clients in general. So when Rolex decided to finally end the Cellini line in 2022, the 1908 had some big shoes to fill. And although the 1908 looks pretty simple, it's actually a very serious watch, and I don't think it gets as much attention as it should. And personally, I also think this watch looks great. We've got a really simple, clean, dressy dial. We've got either a leather bracelet with a metal deploying clasp, as well as this new, really great Milanese style bracelet that's been really popular. It's also got a rare open case back, which we're able to sneak a peek at that caliber 7140. It shows a good amount of the movement with that cutout 18 karat yellow gold roger weight. Now, Rolex doesn't usually do open case backs. We've really only seen it on the 1908, and more recently now we've seen it on the Land Dweller, but that was just released this year. So we went years where the 1908 was the only watch with an open case back in the Rolex lineup. And I think it's great that Rolex is finally starting to show off their movements. They make incredible movements. In the past, Rolex movements have been known more as workhorses, and they aren't really finely finished. But as we can see on the open case back here, there actually is some decent finishing on the rotor as well as the rest of the movement. Not only does this 7140 look great, it also contains some of Rolex's highest technology in their movements. It's got the Cellini hairspring, the chronometry escapement, and the Paraflex shock absorbers, which all result in an astonishing accuracy of plus or minus 2 seconds per day, which is incredible, especially for a dress watch. So you can see Rolex are really trying to distinguish the 1908 from the rest of the lineup. We've got a different style of hands, we have a different style of bracelets, and we've got an open case back. Again, these are just things that Rolex doesn't do on any of the rest of the lineup. Well, apart from the Land Dweller now. Now, with all of these technical advancements in the movement and the fact that this watch is only done in precious metals, you can imagine that Rolex places this at a fairly high price point, and it's up there in their catalog. The white and yellow gold version started around $33,000 Canadian or around $25,000 US. Now, the yellow gold version is the only one that has the optionality for that Milanese style bracelet that they're calling a Thibaut bracelet, and that takes that price from 33,000 Canadian up to about 45,500 Canadian, which is around 33,000 US dollars. And then we've got the platinum version coming in at $40,000 Canadian. And I know what you're thinking, wait a minute, why is the platinum version less expensive than the gold version? Well, that's because that gold version has the gold bracelet on it, and there's a lot of 18 karat gold in that bracelet. So that's what's accounting for that additional cost. Now, these are certainly not cheap watches, and when you're spending that kind of money on a watch, you really need to look around at what other options are available in that price range. And at this point, there are a lot of great options. You can get a brand new 37mm AP Royal Oak 15550 for around that same price, about 40,000 Canadian. You can also get a Vacheron Overseas 41mm for about 36,000 Canadian. And spending this kind of money also puts you into Patek range. So whether that's a Calatrava, an Aquanaut, or even a base model Nautilus, these are the kind of watches that you have to look at and compare when you're spending this kind of money. And I'm obviously talking about MSRP here because the prices on the secondary market for a lot of these watches are crazy, sometimes trading at several times the sticker price of the watch. Now, I'm not saying that these watches are in any way better than the 1908. In fact, I would say that many of them are a little too overhyped right now, especially the Nautilus. But you do have to look at all your options when you're going to spend, a down payment on a house on a watch. And this is part of the point that I'm trying to make here, is that pretty much all of the watches that I just mentioned, other than the Calatrava, are trading for much, much higher than their MSRP on the secondary market. And the Nautilus specifically can be trading at, 100,000 or more, significantly more, depending on the spec and the rarity of it. And again, this is a watch that MSRP is around $30,000 to $40,000. So, again, this is trading at several times the actual price of the watch on the secondary market. And obviously more complicated and more rare versions are even more expensive. I'm mostly just referencing the base models here. And the 1908, a watch that is very technically up there with the rest of them. It looks great. It's built by Rolex. It's an incredible watch. Its secondary prices don't reflect that sort of hype that actually trades similar to its MSRP, other than the new version that's on that Milanese bracelet. That trades quite a bit higher than MSRP, but it's also a new release, and I think people are really excited about that bracelet. And that starts to beg the question, why isn't the 1908 as popular or more popular than some of these other really hyped up watches right now? And I think it's because the 1908 is a dress watch. The rest of that group of hyped watches, other than the Calatrava, are steel sports watches. And as we know, steel sports watches are the pinnacle of the height in the watch market right now. But if this Settimo bracelet version of the 1908 that is trading much above MSRP on the secondary market is any indication, then maybe we are starting to move away from this trend of steel sports watches, and people are looking for something different, and they're transitioning to more dress watches. People get tired of hype, people get tired of what's popular, and they always want to try and find something new and unique, and I do think dress watches could be that next trend. We're already starting to see some hype around geezer watches where people are getting interested in older dress watches that were really unique, whether that was through diamond settings or stone dials, or just something different that stood out to them that was allowing them to have a unique watch. Now, if you're like me, you might be thinking, what is stopping someone from getting or having a gold 1908 that's on the original leather bracelet and now going to Rolex and saying, hey, I want to buy that Settimo bracelet? Because it's not going to only look better on the watch, but it could also increase the price on the secondary market. But if you know Rolex, they're almost definitely going to say no. Unless you're a really good client, maybe they'll give you one. I think that in the watch world, people are always looking for ways to be unique and stand out. And I think that the hype of the steel sports watches will hopefully start to die down eventually here. And maybe you could move into the dress watches. And again, there's nothing wrong with steel sports watches. I love them. They're fantastic. There's a reason they're so popular. But I do think that there's other watches in other categories that people should get to know. And back to the Cellini, Rolex did some pretty cool things with it over the years. And as the 1908 is a new lineup that's only been around for 2 years, I do think that Rolex have a lot more planned for this, but right now there's not a ton of options or variations. As we can see, that new Settimo bracelet, that's the first sort of variation or spec that we've been able to do, other than just, dial colors, black or white, or what precious metal it's in. But I don't expect to see anything new in the 1908 lineup in the near future, as we just got that new bracelet, and as we know, Rolex are glacially slow at bringing out new updates for new lineups, and when they do, it's usually small changes, and they'll just sort of slowly iterate and move along as the years go on. But I do think that Rolex have some big plans for the 1908 over the next, say, 5 or 10 years. I think we'll start to see some new variations and some new specs, whether that's stone dials, new metals, or ideally some gem sets. As we know, Rolex is world-class at doing gem set watches. So what do you think of the 1908? Is it too expensive? Are Rolex just having it in the catalog to have a dress watch? Or do you think it's a really good watch that people aren't really noticing yet? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.